वनचारी तेरा वनचारी यमुना तेरा वनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंजा बिहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंजा बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय ओम विष्णु पाद परम परिव्राज विचारि श्री शस्त्र श्री वृंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। जहाँ विष्णु पाद परम परिव्राज स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद नंदकरी वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नाम चाहे ग्रंथ श्रीमद् भागवतम जय गौ हनुमान। Begin by reading from Srila Prabhupada Amrita. This is chapter 19, Planting the Seed. Bruce Cha had just graduated from New York University and was applying for a job. One day, an ex-roommate told him about the Swami. He had visited down on the 2nd Avenue. They sing there, his friend said, and they have this far-out thing where they have some dancing, and Allen Ginsberg was there. The Swami was difficult to understand, his friend explained. And besides that, his followers recorded his talks on a tape recorder. Why should he have a big tape recorder? That's not very spiritual. But Bruce became interested. He was already a devotee of Indian culture. 4 years ago, when he was barely 20, Bruce had worked during the summer as a steward aboard an American freighter and gone to India, where he had visited temples, brought pictures of Shiva, Ganesh, and books on Gandhi, and felt as if he were part of the culture. When he returned to NYU, he read more about India and wrote a paper on Gandhi for his history course. He would eat in Indian restaurants and attend Indian films and music recitals, and he was reading the Bhagavad Gita. He had even given up eating meat. He had plans of returning to India, taking some advanced college courses, and then coming back to America to teach Eastern religions. But in the meantime, he was experimenting with LSD. Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, Text 44. Bhagya Mano Lalitam Tatra Tatra Chikaikai Kridan Parivrtastribhir Radine Mavisachucho Upagiyamano Lalitam Tatra Tatra Chikayakai Kridan Parivrtastribhir Radine Mavisachucho Upagiyamano Lalitam Tatra Tatra Chikayakai Kridan Parivrtastribhir Radinim Avishachucho Bhagiyamano Lalitam Tatra Tatra Chagayakai Ridam Parivrtastribhir Bhagiyamano Lalitam Tatra Tatra Chagayakai Ridam Parivrtastribhir Radinim Avishachucho Bhagiyamano Lalitam Kai Ridam Parivrtastribhir Harim Hari Shachchucho Upagiyamano Lalitam Atratacharyagayakai Vedan Parivrita Stribir Radinim Avishachchucho. Word for word. Upagiyamanaha, being sung about. Lalitam, nicely. Tatra tatra, here and there. Cha, also. Gayakai, by the singers. Kridan, playing. Parivritaha, surrounded. Stribihi, by women. Harinim, in the water of the river. Avishat, entered. Chucho, when it was too hot. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Many professional singers used to sing about the glories of King Puranjana and his glorious activities. When it was too hot in the summer, he used to enter a reservoir of water. He would surround himself with many women and enjoy their company. Purport. A living being has different activities in different stages of life. One stage is called Jagrata, or the life of awakening, and another is called Swapna, or the life of a dream. Another stage is called Sushupti, or life in an unconscious state. And still another stage occurs after death. In the previous verse, the life of awakening was described. That is, the man and woman were married and enjoyed life for 100 years. In this verse, life in the dream state is described for the activities of Puranjana accomplished during the day were also reflected at night in the dream state. Puranjana used to live with his wife for sense enjoyment, and at night, this very sense enjoyment was appreciated in different ways. A man sleeps very soundly when he is greatly fatigued, and when a rich man is greatly fatigued, he goes to his garden house with many female friends and there enters the water and enjoys their company. Such is the tendency of the living entity within this material world. A living entity is never satisfied with a woman unless he is trained in the system of brahmacharya. Generally, a man's tendency is to enjoy many women, and even at the very end of life, the sex impulse is so strong that even though one is very old, he still wants to enjoy the company of young girls. Thus, because of the strong sex impulse, the living entity becomes more and more involved in this material world. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Read the verse one more time. Many professional singers used to sing about the glories of King Puranjana and his glorious activities. When it was too hot in the summer, he used to enter a reservoir of water. He would surround himself with many women and enjoy their company. So in this chapter, we're hearing the journey of the living entity in this material world, how this story began to be narrated was with Maharaj Prachini Barisha. He spent a lot of his time engaged in performing yagyas or fruitive activity in order to enjoy in this world. Narada Muni, being compassionate upon Maharaj Prachini Barisha, approached him and explained to him that considering that the goal of life is to end all misery and enjoy happiness, unending happiness, neither of which can be achieved by fruitive activity. What is the purpose of your fruitive activities? So beginning with this, we can see that the endeavor of the living entity to enjoy is very strong and very ingrained. Life after life, that desire has been present. So a lot of endeavor goes into those things, particularly in this previous ages. We may not be able to relate so much because they're not practical in today's day and age, but these Maharajas used to go to perform very elaborate yajnas, very elaborate sacrifices. And within these sacrifices, there was a lot of details which had to be performed. And if there's any discrepancy whatsoever, the yajna would not be successful. Therefore, for example, the purpose of these sacrifices is to prove the efficacy of the mantras, to create prosperity in the kingdoms and prosperity for, basically the persons who the king is looking after. So when they put an animal into the fire, this animal should be coming out as elevated as a human being or into a higher form. If there's any discrepancy whatsoever in these yajnas, then that living entity does not take the human form. In fact, it's described that those living entities can be waiting for the time of death of the individual who caused those discrepancies because he is the one who killed them. So there's no action in this material world which doesn't have equal and opposite reaction. Everything that we perform has a reaction either elevating or degrading. So knowing the state of this, Narada Muni being very compassionate, seeing Maharaj Prachini Barisha as a descendant of Dhruva Maharaj, thinking, you've come from such a great line, such a potent devotional service, why are you wasting your life engaging in fruitive activity? Following which, Maharaj Prachini Barisha, he agrees with Narada Muni. He says, I've been engaged in a lot of this fruitive activity, please enlighten me and free me from all of these things. So what we can learn there is that, in the preaching mood, we can only preach as far as the person is willing to hear. So I found this quite instructive, is that initially Narada Muni's putting the bait down there, saying, asking some question, not saying, this is wrong, that's wrong, but, these things that don't actually lead to happiness or ending all miseries. But then when Maharaj Prachini Barisha responded favorably, that's a good opportunity for the preacher to go deeper, to instruct more further in the science of devotional service. But just to illustrate the point even deeper, Narada Muni went on to explain this allegorical history Purana of King Puranjana, which essentially, as I mentioned earlier, is the journey of the living entities in this material world. So that's the endeavors that we may see in those previous ages of those living entities trying to enjoy in this world. And then we can reflect in our own lives and the lives of this world, how much endeavor goes in to try to enjoy in this world. How much infrastructure is available. Our, so-called governments have facilitated so much facility for education, for the purpose so that people can get good jobs, they can earn money, they can be prosperous in society. But there is no education on the spiritual well-being. So by the end of it, you've gone through your education, you've spent a minimum of 12, 13, 20 years studying in education so that you can work day and night, all day. There's a nice purport in the second canto. Srila Prabhupada describes this endeavor of the living entity trying to work in this world to enjoy. He describes how, there's many people who they're rising super early in the morning, they're traveling on the train for several hours, they're working all day and night, they're coming home, traveling again, they come home, have a little bit of sex and go to sleep. And that's the satisfaction of the living entity. Unfortunately, for most of us living in New Zealand, we generally don't have to travel 3 hours to arrive in our destination. But yeah, I know people that have, people sometimes living in, Hamilton might be working in Auckland and vice versa, and around the country, there's people that will travel. Some of us may be fortunate that we can just work from home. It's quite common these days. But still, the principle is the same. You may not be traveling so far to your job to facilitate sense gratification, but the principle is that you're utilizing the majority of your time in your day, not necessarily you guys directly, but the point being that the living entity who's enamored in sense gratification is utilizing every hour of his day from when he wakes up to when he goes to sleep to think, how can I enjoy? And then being caught up in this process of working, enjoying a little bit, sleeping, the living entity tends to confuse his endeavor for sense gratification as happiness in itself. So then some people might say, well, these devotees, they're working so hard day and night, organizing festivals or preaching, doing book distribution, maintaining their families. So what is the difference? So there's a large difference between the endeavors of the materialists and the endeavors of the devotees, although they may appear similar. The thing with materialistic endeavor is it's based on a misconception. It's based on the conception that I am this material body, right? So if I ask someone who they are, or, generally, we go to I was at some conference yesterday, and generally the small talk is, oh, who are you? And they're like, oh, my name is such and such, and I do this and that, and that's my job. And, generally people identify themselves based on their occupation, I have this job, or I am father, I am mother, or I am, it can go international, or, I am from Indian, I am a Kiwi, I am Maori, etc. But such temporary designations are not very beneficial for structuring our whole endeavor in life, right? For example, you jump on a bus to go to work and you're on the bus for 40 minutes. And someone asks you, oh, who are you? And you say, oh, my name is such and such and I'm on the bus, right? And so I'm going to plan my whole life around, getting a nice seat on the bus. And then, I like sitting on the back seat of the bus, and I go down the back and it's all full. And then I'm frustrated. And so I try to find another seat, and I don't want to sit next to someone else. I want my own seat. So I'm, spending a lot of time trying to find a nice place to sit. And then I find, okay, I have to stand. And then finally there's a seat available, and boom, the bus ride's finished and we get off. So we wasted a whole lot of time trying to be comfortable in a temporary situation. So we can find ourselves in that situation in this material world. We're here for 70 years, 80 years, 100 years is what's described maximum in this material world. There's a few outliers. Some people might live 110, or, there's yogis that live for a long time, but we're talking about people with materialistic endeavor. There's a maximum of 100 years to be here. And it appears like it's a significant period of time. Just like on our bus ride, if we're bored and uncomfortable, it can appear like a significant period of time. I don't want to be uncomfortable for 40 minutes. But in the sojourn in this material existence, having gone from one life to the next, 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 and one can go on and on and on, through 8,400,000 species of life, trying to make oneself comfortable in this world, one finally has the opportunity of the human form of life. It's the only chance to get out of this material world, and the endeavor to make oneself comfortable is futile. It's considered foolishness, just like the person on the bus trying to make himself comfortable for this short period of time. So that's part of the futility of sense gratification. That's one aspect of the futility of trying to enjoy in this world, is that you're just not here for long enough to make it worthwhile. So then one might think, okay, I will follow the karma kandis and I'll perform yagyas and go to the heavenly planets, and kind of that's what we see in these great kings. They understand that this life is very short, so let's not just focus on enjoying in this life, let's focus on the bigger picture, let's enjoy for a few lives. So ultimately, this is a cycle which goes down and down and down. So through yagya, one through doing these various sacrifices, even performing materialistic life perfectly according to the Vedas, one cannot achieve liberation, and one cannot go back home back to Godhead. So there's various endeavors which one can perform to achieve liberation. So Pravodhananda Saraswati, he compares this compares liberation, compares going to the heavenly planets to a type of phantasmagoria. So this was a new word for me, reading Srila Prabhupada's books. There's some nice long words in there. But phantasmagoria basically means something that's there and then it's not there. It exists, but it doesn't really exist. Or will-o'-the-wisp is another term that we hear Srila Prabhupada use, and that's referred to that light that appears in the forest. It's not there for very long. Or the mirage in the desert. It's there, there is a mirage, but what we understand of it is not exactly what it is. So that living entity can perform such things, and then they go up and they'll come back down, and then they go up and then they come back down. And then we can look at the various senses, our ability to enjoy, and which we'll start to hear in the next few verses about these different gates, and these different gates of the body is ways in which we can enjoy in this material world. So you can go through them and you can see the futility of the ability to actually enjoy them. If you want to enjoy taste, it's only so much before you feel sick. There's only so much ice cream you can eat, or so much, even nice prasadam. Our bodies are limited to the ability to enjoy with the tongue. Then the ability to see the things are so temporary. And also our eyes are very limited in the spectrum of what they can actually see in this world. So much of what we hear in the Vedas, we might think, oh, this is some sort of imagination or some sort of, I've never seen these things, how can they exist? But looking at, even the scientists can understand that the ability to see through these eyes is limited. We can use various devices to see more subtle aspects, or like, for example, you can use some UV goggles to see various things which you wouldn't see otherwise. And they say different species of life, they can see things. But generally our focus on beautiful things is on that which is temporary. And so that which is once beautiful in the period of time will no longer be beautiful. And we could see from these previous civilizations, you look at, what comes to mind, the great civilization of Egypt, what's left of it is a couple of buildings and, Sphinx with his nose fallen off. So the beauty, it degrades over time, even things that are built so great. As we see in this verse, it's very much about the sex impulse, which is looking at the attraction to the other opposite sex, which is essentially based on the beauty, which degrades over time. And then we want to. So essentially, they're all very temporary in their ability to enjoy these different things. So we're spending the time like going here and there, carrying someone else's load is that's the role of the muta or the donkey. So in one's endeavor is in this world, we see that a lot of our time is actually just carrying someone else's burden for someone else's social gratification. And therefore, we didn't really get much out of it, like you look at that donkey, he's carries so much load, someone's getting paid some good money for that thing, and this donkey's gets some carrot, which is, worth nothing. Or, we're working hard and now, we're getting paid our small salary while our boss is charging us out at 7 or 8 times our rate, And this way, we're actually spending our time focusing on someone else. So this misidentification of the living with who we are, focusing on that which is temporary, that temporary position, is really the crux of this material world. It's a misunderstanding. The things are here, but what they're here for, we don't understand. So that's the first aphorism of the Vedas, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, means that to inquire into the absolute. So a fortunate living entity, having gone through so much process, getting frustrated again and again, should periodically inquire, what is going on? That is actually the goal of life. And if one is fortunate, one inquires into the right thing. One of the saddest things we see in today's day and age, there is a number of people that are frustrated and inquisitive, but there's so many cheaters in this world. And cheaters, combined with the living entity's desire to enjoy, one can get confused in his endeavor to find the truth in this world. So we see so many various kind of, my friends have been preaching at these various festivals, and they show all of these different hodgepodge, this thing, that thing, this way to be spiritual and that way to be spiritual. But it's only the devotees of Krishna that have the ultimate goal, the ultimate knowledge of how to become free from this material existence. Basically, what I've seen in most of the kind of new age spiritual life is kind of like how you can feel good right now. And we do preach a little bit, chant and be happy, chant and be happy, but it's kind of more like chant, perform austerity, and you'll be happy later. We do have this, Raja Vidya, Raja Guruyam, Pavitram, Idam Uttamam, Pratyakshavagamam, Kamyam, Susukam, Katam, Avyayam, that this knowledge is the king of all knowledge, is the king of education, most secret of all secrets, very confidential. And when it's performed properly, it's joyfully performed. So to the degree in which we actually experience satisfaction in our Krishna consciousness comes to the degree in which that's performed properly and correctly. And having these various stages of devotional service means that in the beginning there's some taste, but it's like a shadow taste of Krishna consciousness. It's usually reflected off the more senior devotees, more advanced devotees. We get some experience, but we're not necessarily feeling bliss and total satisfaction from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep. Well, that is the experience of advanced devotees according to what we hear in the scriptures. So having the actual knowledge of what spiritual life is and the means to attain it is not common knowledge. And so it's, we look how many people in the Bhagavatam class, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 people in the Bhagavatam class, maybe a few more online in Auckland. And worldwide, there's a lot of people attending Bhagavatam class, thanks to Srila Prabhupada's endeavors to spread it around the world. But compared to the masses of people, there's not very many people that have the highest knowledge. So it's explicitly stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that those that are born in the land of Bharat, they're very fortunate to be growing up with this knowledge, and it's their responsibility to preach this knowledge all over the world. And those of us who are following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and this Guru Parampara, it's also our responsibility to share this knowledge with all of the people possible. It is an austerity and it's not easy, and it can become more easy the more that you perform the activities. But duty consciousness is very important in Krishna consciousness, in any endeavor actually. You know, those of you that are married, you don't just perform your duty when it feels good. You've got to do it all the time. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So similarly, in Krishna consciousness, one has to perform one duty whether it feels good or not. When we get up in the morning, we have to chant our rounds. We shouldn't be analyzing, do I feel like chanting my rounds? Do I not feel like chanting my rounds? You know, do I feel like reading the scriptures? Do I not feel like reading the scriptures? Krishna consciousness is performed on a scheduled measurement as exemplified by the Goswamis. I can't remember the verse off the top of my head, but basically it describes how this Goswamis, they're offering obeisances at scheduled measurements. And that, you know, we're performing our rounds at particular times of the day. According to a schedule and a plan. It's not based on a sentimental feeling. So when we get up, we want to be able to have that time set aside to grow in our Krishna consciousness. And if we're not making progress in Krishna consciousness, usually you can trace that back to your chanting, your rounds. You know, in my experience, you know, when our Krishna consciousness is not feeling so strong, it usually comes back to sloppy rounds. So an instruction I was given in an early point in time of my Krishna consciousness was chant Hare Krishna like your life depends on it. It seems quite a strong statement, like your life depends on it. You know, we can think of some things that our life depends on. We're driving on the car, driving on the right side of, we drive on the right side of the road, anyway, the right side of the road. The right and wrong. Driving on the right side of the road, our life depends on that. Because if we're, you know, just driving willy-nilly here and there and we just jump on the other side of the road, then we're going to crash and die or get severely injured. And this kind of things, you know. So when we jump in the car and we go for a drive, we're quite careful that we're going to drive on the right side of the road. We're not just going to be, you know, oh yeah, I just like, oh yeah, drive a little bit here, a little bit there, and you know, we put some endeavor into those things. Some other things that, yeah, our life depends on eating. Every day we eat. If we don't eat, we starve. It's not that, you know, some days we just eat and some days we don't eat. We eat every day. So yeah, chanting should be every day. And carefully. Another example I was thinking of is when we're building a structure, building a foundation. This is very important, especially in our beginning years in Krishna consciousness and also later on to keep it strong. Is building a foundation. Anyone who's been involved with building anything, whether it be with Lego or actual buildings, knows that you can't just throw the things here and there. You know, if I'm building a fence, I can't just like, you know, whack a nail here, whack a nail there, whack it wherever I feel like. I put one pile here, you know. It's quite planned, you know. When we I built some retaining walls, I put some decks in, and you know, we actually have to measure out where we're going to put the wood, and we've got to dig the holes to a specific depth. If we only half dig the depth, you know, no one's going to know that we only half dug it, right? Just like, you know, in your day-to-day, no one's going to know if you half chanted your rounds. But it will affect you, and it will affect you later on. So when we're building that thing, we have to dig the holes properly. And we've got to put all of the foundations in and create the things, the foundation and the fence properly. So similarly, when one's chanting Hare Krishna, one has to be careful to chant and hear every single mantra, every single round. And yeah, it may take time to perfect. It may take time to perfect. You know, it's not that someone's instantly a master builder as soon as they jump on a building site. But the principle should be understood, and the principle should never be forgotten, and that endeavor to become more and more closer to the goal should never be forgotten. So when we're chanting our rounds, it's not that we're just doing, you know, one mantra here, one mantra there, doing that, trying to do other things while we're chanting our rounds. Sacred time, sacred place, generally, you know. It's a instruction given in the nectar of instruction that we require all of our members to rise by 4 a.m., attend Mangalati and chant Hare Krishna. You know, we may not have the ability to rise super early every day, but we should remember that that is the proper standard. Anything less is not the proper standard. We may not be at the highest standard, but we should not forget what the highest standard is. So, you know, as we get busy in life, we're not thinking, oh, you know, what I'm doing now, that's the real thing, that's the actual standard, I can't do better. And that is part of the importance of the initial training in Krishna consciousness, particularly for men that enter into the brahmacharya ashram and will spend some years practicing under the direct guidance of senior devotees before they're having to manage their own ashrams. That gives that foundation which you can know what is the proper standard. If one is unable to hold the proper standard, one should not become resentful of the standard and think, okay, you know, this that's not practical. No one can actually hold those standards. Because generally, the way in which you see the world is through your own vision. So we see, according to how strong our practice is, we're going to see other people, you know. And this requires a constant endeavor. So we could be endeavoring we put so much endeavor into enjoying, finding comfort in this world, but just that little bit of endeavor in Krishna consciousness has no loss of diminution. So the more time we put into Krishna consciousness, there's nothing to be lost. Nehabikramo nashvasti. I forget. There's no loss of diminution in this devotional service. Whatever advancement one makes, there's no loss. But everything which you endeavored for in this material world, ultimately it goes away. So early in this chapter, it's described that we have many pseudo duties in this world, namely wife, family, children, job, etc. It's called Kuta Dharma, or pseudo duties. And we can get so caught up in these things that we can forget the goal of life. So Prahlad Maharaj, he calls it Andhakupam, or the dark well of material existence. Why it's a dark well is one gets so deeply entrenched in the so-called duties that he forgets the real duties, and when he calls for help, no one can hear him. There's a nice description Shukadeva Goswami gives in the 5th canto of the living entity. He thinks, you know, I'm going to go into the forest, I'm going to collect some commodities, and I'm going to sell them for a profit. That's how we make money usually, you know, you buy things or you acquire goods and you sell them for more than you got them for. So yeah, it's a good idea, business idea. I'm going to go into the forest, but then getting into the forest, he may see things that, you know, attract him here and there, and he goes deeper and deeper. And when he gets so deep into the forest, he gets so lost in that forest that he can't find his way out. He's looking here and there, and he calls so loudly, you know, can anyone help me? I'm lost. But being so deep in ignorance, or dark in that forest, no one can hear, and one gets stuck there and goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So there's that other verse, Mate Vipadde Mate na Krishne Paratosuto Vama Teba Meto Vipadde Griha Pratanam Adanta Gobi Vishatam Tamishram Puna Punaschavita Chavananam. So a living entity, He's taken this griha vrata, or this vow of sense gratification. That's the distinction between the griha maidis and the grihastas. The griha maidis, their only goal in life is sense gratification. So having taken this vow for sense gratification, one's become influenced to do this by one's own concoction and by the influence of others. And therefore, even by one's own endeavor, by the instructions of others, by the combination of both, one gets caught up in this material world, pursuing the endeavors of the senses. One glides, again, always chewing that which has been chewed, and glides deeper and deeper into hell. So that's the sojourn of the living entity in this material world, getting trying to make a profit, trying to get ahead in this world, and you get lost. So Srila Prabhupada is constantly reminding us that the actual goal of life is to attain Krishna consciousness. So all of those senses which we have been serving so, devotionally, life after life, those senses are not the masters, but they are only there to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. This body that we're in is a covering of the spirit soul. And the body is essentially a vehicle for sense gratification. And that vehicle, by misunderstanding who one actually is, identifying with the temporary, like the man on the bus, or means that one will utilize the senses for sense gratification. So the fortunate living entity comes into contact with the pure devotee. And then by coming into contact with the pure devotee, as Maharaj Prashini Barishad is here, he's coming into contact with Narada Muni, he gets to hear the proper goal of life. What is this human form of life? What is the goal? Why can I not be satisfied in this world? Why do my endeavors never bring me satisfaction? And so having that instruction, the spiritual master is the one that can cut that knot of the material existence and give one instruction on how to engage one's senses in the service of the Lord. There are many examples are given there. One of the most common examples is the watering the root of the tree, or feeding the hand, feeding the mouth. We can take the hand as the living entity, or the whole body as the living entity, and the hand is a part of that living entity. And the hand is thinking, I want to enjoy a gulab jamun, and I'm just going to enjoy all by myself. And the hand takes gulab jamun and just mushes it between his hands and makes a mess, put it here, put it there. I just speculate, this is like speculation. And often we can be like that in this world, we didn't get the manual, how does it work? When we got here, our parents didn't know what that, I can't speak for all of you, but many of us, our parents didn't know what they were doing, their parents didn't know what they were doing, their parents didn't know what they were doing in this world. And therefore, they taught us the way that you eat gulab jamuns is you put it between your hands and you smush it together. They didn't actually teach us that specifically, but the analogy is there. They taught us that to be happy in this world, you've got to find some satisfaction. You have to enjoy something. But with the Divya Jnana, we understand that the living being part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot enjoy independently. Srila Prabhupada goes so far in the introduction of Bhagavad Gita to describe that the living entity who thinks himself independent is insane. Insanity, You might have been in you might have visited a mental asylum or been to one, or, and you've seen people doing all sorts of crazy things, and to you that looks crazy. Right? To the pure devotees, just the general living entities in this world, not the ones locked up in the asylum, but the ones who are trying to enjoy their senses, they look like madmen. I think of some, we see, children doing so many silly things, and they're just children. But then when we see adults that are their whole goal of life is pursuit and sense gratification, that can be considered insanity because it's based on a misconception. There's various types of disorders one can get, like schizophrenia, etc., where one hears different voices in their heads, or they have various personalities or multiple personality disorders, etc. Yeah, no, quite, not to, they require assessment and all those kind of things. But the living entity also has this mental disease of identifying as something which he is not. So the living entity gets, if he's fortunate, he gets to engage in some devotional service. He gets to come in contact with the spiritual master, Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Rata Bija. He attains that seed of devotional service. It gets the first instructions from the spiritual master: you're not this body. Tahino smanya tade hey komaram yoganam jarat tade hantara prapti diras tatramuniti. Now, this living entity continuously passing on this body from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly passing to another body at time of death. One who is sober is not bewildered by such a change. Where is this education? No one is receiving this education. Not once did we learn anything about reincarnation, or that, that you're not this material body. It doesn't exist. So therefore, the modern civilization is highly disadvantaged because we don't have great leaders that can impart this, create this structure. So we take that instruction, we apply it to the best of our abilities, and we continue to try to serve the spiritual master, serve Krishna. And that's essentially, you're taking that gulab jamun and you're putting it in the mouth, and then the whole body gets nourished. You can have the most healthiest meal, but if you're just, using it for massage, then you're not going to get the benefit for it. I see my baby, so he's putting this pumpkin on her body and things like that. And she's just a baby. She doesn't know any better. So it's up to us as the adults to instruct, Actually, that goes in the mouth. That's how you'll get the nourishment. And, this example is coming to life to me the other day, because I've used that example many times in the class. And yeah, it's me actually, It just makes a mess, and then someone's got to clean it up. So having that instruction, it's a very special thing. It's very rare. We ought not take it for granted. We ought to act on it and continually make progress, continually move forward, one way or another. Without the association of the Vaishnavas, it's practically impossible. It's described that, one who thinks he can make advancement without the association of devotees is essentially hallucinating, or it's another form of insanity also. So we take that instruction. But basically, we learn that we're not the material body. What does that mean? We're the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. That's how you can become satisfied. And by practical application of that, you will get satisfaction. You'll get taste along the way. Your anarthas will pop up. You'll have to deal with those anarthas. They'll go away after a long period of time or short period of time. There's no restriction on how fast you can practice Krishna consciousness. You don't have to be on a slow train. It's not required. But we have to be realistic. And that comes down to guidance from our spiritual master, our various mentor senior devotees who can guide us properly, how to engage in Krishna consciousness and continually make an advancement. Yeah, and ultimately, give up the sex impulse. I described a few verses ago that to give up sex life, to give up the sex impulse, it requires one to be an advanced devotee. And there's quoted that verse from Yamuna Acharya. One, he says that now that I think of sex life, whenever I think of it, I spit at the thought. So that's kind of like a litmus test where you're at in Krishna consciousness is how much are you attracted to materialistic things in life, the crux of which is sex life. And it may be, it may not be sex life, it may be making the world a nice place. You know, the way it manifests between men and women can be different. So that's the litmus test of where we're at and where we need to go, how much I'm attracted to the materialistic things in this world. If we find ourselves attracted to the materialistic things in this world, it's not the end, but at least we have some divya gyan that we can apply and know what to act on and what not to act on. Most people don't have any knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. That's the description of the demoniac. They do not know what is to be done, what is not to be done. They mistake religion for irreligion and irreligion for religion. So yeah, we ought to take this movement seriously and give it to whoever we can. Take whatever opportunities we have to preach this knowledge far and wide within our own families and beyond, to whatever capacity we have. You know, some of us in our stage of life, it may be just our family, or you know, if we've got more time, we're going out, engaging one way or another in the Sankirtan movement. Okay, I'll finish there. If we have any questions or comments.
Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. Could you just clarification on one part? You mentioned the analogy of going deep and deep. And then you mentioned that once you so deep that no one can hear you, nobody. What is the technology in terms of shouting? So once you're so deep and you're shouting, what is the connection? What is the just in
Yeah, my understanding is that it's kind of like you want a way out, but you're so deep that you can't, you know, you may be calling loudly, but you don't know where to call, you don't know who to call, you don't know, you know, you may be so deep in ignorance and you may be suffering so much in this world. And who are you going to call, you know, the crisis line, or, you know, they may be able to help you temporarily with your mental state, but you call for help. The people who can help you cannot hear you. That's my understanding.
Yeah, like everybody mentioned, post-material, if somebody is so materially deep, isn't it that they, I'm not saying you should get materially deep into it.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm just saying that those who have gone so materially deep into the forest, you know, aren't they the ideal, you know,
Yes, that is correct. It is, you know, if one is deeply in, you know, looking through the forest here, oh, this looks good, that looks good, that looks good. And it's going to be harder to preach to such a person. But it's not that most of the materially exhausted persons have joined ISKCON in the last 50 years, is it? Yeah, you could probably say there's a lot of materially exhausted people in this world who have not come in contact with the pure devotees. So those fortunate persons who are materially exhausted come into contact with the pure devotees. And it's up to the rest of the devotees who may not be on the platform pure devotional service, like myself, to make that endeavor to try and find those persons and bring them to the pure devotees. It's not just that automatically by you know, going deep into this material world, getting exhausted and suffering, that you're going to attain Krishna consciousness. That's my understanding. Yeah, generally kind of a good foundation is either the temple program, ashram program type thing, you know, rising early, chanting the rounds all in one go, every day, without fail. Yeah, having a morning program, regularly reading the scriptures. Yeah, you know, like I slept in, my alarm went off and I slept in for 10 minutes. Now it's 4:10. Okay, I better sleep until 7. Yeah, because I couldn't get up at 4, you know. If you didn't get the right thing, you just keep trying and you keep trying. And that's part of building the foundation. It's not that you get it right immediately, but you need to get that structure. That structure is given to us by Srila Prabhupada. He's given us a structure to build that foundation. It's not that we may get it right perfectly immediately, you know. You hear, you know, examples of the older days in ISKCON where, you know, devotees that wouldn't get up from Mangalati until you drag them down the stairs and chuck them in the shower. We don't have such force. So yeah, it is hard, especially living on your own. Not being you know, if you're not in an ashram, you know, it can be more difficult because it's just you that you're accountable to. So you might find that having a buddy that you can share your experiences with, or you know, that you can hold each other accountable to those things, or you have a goal set in mind. I'm going to get up early 5 days a week, you know. But building those foundations, it comes from, you can't just think, oh, you know, I'm just going to get up early to the morning and leave it to the alarm. Preparing our morning starts the night before. Preparing our morning means that when I get up, all I've got to do is chant. I don't have, you know, all these other responsibilities, which is part of rising early, because as soon as the sun hits, the mode of passion arises, and then we've got different things to do. We've got, you know, so many things to do. So, yeah. Yeah, don't get discouraged. You just keep trying, keep trying, keep trying, make more and more endeavor to get to where you want to be. Because it's not realistic to expect that you'll get it right every time. Is it okay? All right. Kantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thanks,